Hello everybody, welcome back to my little bookish channel. It's the 1st of December, another month has passed again, and as always I'll give you a little wrap up of what I read this month. I talked about some of these books briefly in my last video. Today I'm gonna go a bit more in depth and also tell you about my reading plans for the near future. So without further ado, let's get to it. The first book I read was Homo Faber by Max Frisch. This copy is missing the dust jacket, but I don't care. It's collected quite a bit of dust over the month. Max Frisch, one of my favorite discoveries of this year, I'll say. Not really a new discovery. I read this book in school at some point, but I must not have finished it or something, because maybe I just couldn't remember it. I didn't really I felt like I was reading it for the first time. And also, to me, this is really not a book that you read in school. Well, it's about Max Frisch, a Swiss author, wrote a lot, around the 60s. This is set in the late 50s, this book. His style is very, very like auto-fiction, like very autobiographic and very close to his own life. This is a story that feels kind of like a travel story, kind of like a diary almost. It's quite personal in places. It does have like a diary-like feel in some places, even though it's not, it's written in normal chapters like a normal book. This is about people that he meets throughout his travels, and the main focus being a romantic relationship. And there is a spoiler here, but it's like a spoiler that's on every blurb, but if you don't want to know it, then skip the next 30 seconds. But yeah, he ends up meeting a very young woman, and they start having an affair. And later on, they find out they're actually father and daughter. It's an incest story. It's unclear whether they actually ever had sex or not. It's kind of intentionally not told. But yeah, that's kind of like the gist of the story. I remembered this being kind of like Lolita, but this guy really cannot be, I don't think there's any evil here. He literally did not know he was a father at all and randomly found out. And also, like, kind of, well, I'm not gonna spoil the ending, but it does stop that relationship. It's, very tangled up, very intertwined, but very well written, and in my opinion quite easy to read. So definitely Max Frisch, really, really like one of my favorite authors. Now, read a couple of his books. I have a couple more unread ones, but yeah, definitely someone I will look out for. Big recommendation. Next up, in my last video, I told you I had food poisoning, which was very bad and kind of knocked me out for about 2 weeks. And this kind of accompanied me through that. 9 stories by the author of The Catcher in the Rye, that being J.D. Salinger. And those were some really nicely written stories. I found it quite interesting that some of these have quite a lot of similarities. These 9 stories, almost every single story features children as either the protagonist or as characters that are featured in the story. And a lot of stories have like a kind of framed narrative going on that could have, I don't know, they just called it 9 stories, but it could have been something else, I guess. Some of them also feel a little bit autobiographical. especially for Esme with Love and Squalor, which was one of my favorite stories, and which I think is also one of the most famous ones. I've seen copies of this short story collection under the title of For Esme with Love and Squalor and Other Stories. So it's a pretty good story. It's about a soldier who kind of meets a young girl, like a 13-year-old girl, and they kind of have like a nice conversation, and then they write each other letters, or she writes him a letter, I think. I don't even remember completely. Anyway, that was one of my favorite stories. The other one was The Laughing Man, which is also kind of a framed narrative about like a boy in like a sports camp, and his counselor tells him some spooky action-packed story. Yeah, that was quite nice. And I wrote down Murakami wishes he could write like this. I truly felt like, not everybody can pull something like this off, Not every writer is gifted to be a short story writer. But J.D. Salinger, in my opinion, definitely is. Next up, The Long Walk, by Slavomir Rawicz. This was actually ghost written by an author called Ronald Downing, and it's a memoir of this man kind of being arrested and being taken to a gulag. His crime being that he was born in Poland and he was living quite close to the border, and the Russian agents, they just kind of arrested anyone under the assumption of being a spy, and forced people into that whole disgusting ordeal of like forcing them into like torturing them, knocking out their teeth and stuff like that to get them to confess something that they never did. And then he got taken here close to Yakutsk in Siberia, and him and was it 6 or 5? Who cares? Some other prisoners, they walked all this way from Siberia to Calcutta to India, which is an insane distance. And it's very well written. It's more written like a novel because it was ghost written by a writer. It's an astounding story. I looked up some stuff about it, and there's a lot of critics, They say this is so unlikely, this could never have happened, and claim to disprove it based on some bullshit. For example, they had like an apparition in the Himalayas where they saw like a creature that they didn't know, and then people took that as a reason to prove his story isn't real, which, I don't know, doesn't seem that unlikely to me that a Polish man would see an unknown animal in a foreign region and call it like a yeti or whatever. And also, by the time Mr. Rawicz told the story, it had been 30 years since he actually experienced it. So imagine telling something to someone that happened 10 years ago, and then imagine telling a story that happened 30 years ago. So I'm not a long walk denier by any means. I thought this was and even if it was made up, who cares? It's still an amazing story, and it feels almost like a Jack London novel or something like that. It is really, really, I was out at uni, and I couldn't wait to get back to read this book. That doesn't happen to me that much. So I thought it was very, very nice and an enjoyable read. Next up, I read Colorless Tsukuru Tazaki by Murakami. Colorless Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage. And this was in my opinion, one of the better Murakami's. I have almost all of his works. I think only missing the two most recent ones. I don't have The City and Its Uncertain Walls, and I think he put out another short story collection. But yeah, I'm reading my way through them. I've been doing that for the last about 2 years or so. and now I'm kind of on the home stretch. This was definitely a cool story. This definitely, yeah, encapsulates his, like, I would say, like, mild magical realism. It's not even close to Kafka on the Shore or 1Q84, but it definitely has, like, you know, this surreal, dreamlike quality that a lot of Murakami's work has. It's kind of about this man, Tsukuru Tazaki. He has a group of friends and they kind of alienate him and cut contact with him, and he has no idea why, and he kind of goes many years later, like in his late 30s, he goes kind of to reconnect with them and to find out what even happened, because back then he never questioned it. He just kind of, you know, admitted, he just kind of went with it, you know. And yeah, it also, you know, not all, it leaves some things open, which is also a Murakami thing that he likes to do, which I think he can pull off. And some cases I find that to be a bit annoying if you don't get all the answers, but in this case I think it works. And if you're a fan of Murakami, I do recommend this, definitely more than some other ones. Yeah, cool, nice little book that I'm glad that I read. Then next up I read Joseph and His Brothers, the first part of this quadrilogy, The Stories of Jacob, by Thomas Mann. This is kind of an Old Testament retelling, you know, the tribe of the Israelites, like Abraham and all that lineage. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I was a little bit familiar with that. Never read the Bible, but read some Bible stories before. This was the first. I have the three more here. And this, in my last video, I said this was the shortest one. Actually, the second one is the shortest one. But yeah, this took me a long time to read. I think about 2.5 months. I needed a lot of time to get into it. In the end, though, I feel like it did pick up the pace, you know. It's just a retelling. There's not going to be any surprising things in there if you know the originating story. But yeah, towards the end there, it did pick up, and I did actually finish. I think probably this part took me like 2 months, and this part took me like less than 2 weeks. So yeah, I did finish it. I am up to reading the 3 remaining parts. This is really just something. This is something quite niche, I would say. This never really got very popular. If I'm not even like a huge Thomas Mann guy, my favorite Thomas Mann is definitely still The Magic Mountain, and I feel like nothing's ever gonna come close to it. But that's alright, I'm still gonna keep reading him. And it did turn out, after a lot of chewing through, to be a nice, enjoyable book. And then I read Zeige deine Wunde, Show Your Wound, Art and Spirituality in the work of Joseph Beuys. If you've been watching this channel, you probably heard me talk about Joseph Beuys at some point. One of my favorite artists of all time, maybe even my favorite artist, I don't even know. This is not a biography. I have his biography. Oh, I just put my finger right onto one of these things. That hurt a little bit. I read this biography last year by Heiner Stachelhaus, which was very nice. And this I got for my birthday a couple years ago, probably like 4 years ago or something, and now I finally got around to reading it. This is kind of a critic of his work. The author is a big fan himself, and he just describes those topics, you know, mythology and spirituality was a big topic of Beuys's art. Yeah, if you know him a little bit, he's been telling this story about how he crashed his plane. He was a pilot in World War II over, I think it was over Ukraine, and he got rescued by some nomadic tribe, which turned out the plane crash was real. The rescue by the tribe thing was most definitely not. It's but I don't know. For me, that doesn't diminish the quality of his work at all. It's that's a topic for a deep conversation, maybe not for a YouTube video. But yeah, he remains one of my favorite artists ever, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. And then my reread, I needed to squeeze in a short one because I hadn't, I had my stomach flu, food poisoning thing, and then I had also worked quite a bit more than I usually do. And so I just reread Waiting for Godot, which, I don't think I'm gonna do an in-depth review. I have that if you watch some older videos of mine, like books that changed my life or my favorite books of all time. It's in there. It is one of my favorite things that I read of all time. The dialogue is just so unique, and at the point of me reading it for the first time was so unlike anything else I've ever read that it left a lasting impression on me, not of me. Well, I kinda sometimes put books under my pillow when I sleep, so maybe I left also an impression on it. That doesn't make sense. I'm probably gonna cut that out. Someone said, I have no idea who it was, but someone said something along the lines of rereading a great work of literature, like one of your favorite books, rereading that feels like you're revisiting some old friends. And that's really what it felt like, man. Vladimir and Estragon, I feel like we're friends. And I this is quite short. I read it a bit too long to read in one sitting. For me, it's like 91 pages. I think I read it in 2 or 3 days. And I found myself kind of missing these characters like I would miss my friends, which I found quite funny and which I really haven't experienced before. But yeah, Samuel Beckett, genius. I think you should read this. Even if you're not really into plays, I think you should read this because this has the potential to change your mind. Okay. And then something cool happened. I already read 100 books this year. And in celebration of that, I'm gonna slow down for the rest of the year. I always had in mind to start the complete prose of Joseph von Eichendorff once I reach 100 books. I don't know, that's just something that I made up in my head. This is all of his, he wrote 2 novels and 11 novellas and short stories, and he wrote some poems, but they're not in here. But all of his prosaic work is in here on about 940 pages. He wrote Life of a Good for Nothing. That's his most famous work. I don't think it's really super well known outside of the German speaking world. He's Austrian, or he was, I should say. Yeah, and that, when I read that, I think it was like from I don't remember exactly what year it was from, but like from the first half of the 19th century. And when I read that some years ago, that was like the first time something from that time period really, really resonated with me. And then I just decided, I saw this for dirt cheap, like a couple euros, and I picked it up and I was like, well, I'm gonna, I don't know if it's a reward. It's not very easy to read it all, and it's gonna take me ages to finish, and I'm just slowing down, I think I'm gonna probably read the first novel and then pause it for a while. This might take me a good few months to get through, but you know, stuff like that, like you know, you wouldn't chug your best wine. That's an analogy I always like. I'm gonna go through this very slowly. It does have a lot of poems in it anyway, and I've been really liking those. This is really maybe one of the things I would like to get into next year is to really get into poetry. I've been preparing for that. I have quite a few volumes of poetry here. I have some, you know, Ingeborg Bachmann, some German poetry. I got, what else do I even have? Yeah, some more niche stuff here, which is kind of weird to start with that. Klar Bunt. And various other little poetry volumes, and that's something that I'll dig into next year. I'm currently reading The Gambler by Dostoevsky, and I think that is probably gonna be, I'm a bit more than halfway through that. That's probably the last novel of this length that I'm gonna read this year. I'm gonna start, you know, use the winter to kind of slow down, to kind of hibernate, and to kind of get into some bigger books that have just been piling up, you know. I've had this on my immediate TBR shelf for ages. The Paradise Was For Us. It's a biography of both Hugo Ball and his wife, Emmy Ball Hennings. Hugo Ball, I haven't started reading it yet, but Hugo Ball was one of the Dadaists, and he did some weird ass performances. He was also a very close friend of Hermann Hesse, who I adore, as you may know. And I actually stumbled upon this book when I was reading Hermann Hesse's in-depth biography, which is also on the shelf here. And yeah, this Dadaist literary friend of Hermann Hesse, who later on turned into like a devout Catholic, which I found kind of intriguing. Which Emmy Hennings, which I don't know very much about her yet, but I think like she's been in prison for some really shady stuff, and it just seems like one of the weirdest couples ever. And so I'm excited to dig into that. And then I'm gonna read at least one of these 3 books that I've also had for a while. I have Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon here, and this really old beat up edition. You know, I don't really know. I know it's like about New York in the 1930s, 40s. I don't really know a whole lot about anything else that happens, but a lot of people seem to really like it. Then I got the Three Musketeers by Dumas in this little edition on like Bible thin paper, which actually this edition only has about 700 pages. Yeah, you can really see the difference here, because this actually is more pages than this one. So yeah, the formatting does make quite a difference sometimes. And then I also have this. I don't even remember where I found this. It's the title translates to The Invention of the Red Army Fraction by a manic depressive by a teenager with manic depression in the summer of 1969 by Frank Witzel. Excuse me. Very quite a mouthful. With a title like that, I'm expecting some more postmodern narrative, maybe. Yeah, this did win the German Book Prize at some point, so it's gonna be good. And yeah, I also recently read, I guess I've been reading a lot of biographies recently. I also read the biography of this terrorist right here, Andreas Baader, who was kind of the founder of this terror organization. And when I was reading that, I did feel like this was already kind of reading like the plot of a novel, because it's so insane, that the stuff that he did. And so I'm interested to kind of read a novel based on well, his organization. There's a way more famous one called the Baader-Meinhof Complex that I also want to read at some point. But yeah, this seems, I don't know, this seems quirky and funny, and maybe, I don't really know, but we'll see. So that's kind of what's going on. I don't think I'll do a reading recap for December. I think I'll just do, well, I'll do a reading recap, but not for the month, but for the whole year. That was quite fun. Last year I just ranked every single book that I read in the whole year, and I'm gonna do that again, because that was great fun. Also to just like pile up everything and see how much you actually read. It's I really like that. So that's coming up. I'm gonna do like top 10s, you know, all that end of the year stuff. I'm kind of a sucker for that, and that's what you have to, what you can expect here on this channel. Oh, one thing I forgot to say actually. Reading goals for next year. My only reading goal that I have for the whole year is to read The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate and his son Daniel Mate, cover to cover. This has been collecting dust. I also had this for a long time. Well, the font is quite big. It just seemed, I adore this man, Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's full of wisdom. He knows so many things. He has experienced so many things, you know. Trauma, illness, and healing, you know. Who doesn't have some trauma going on? I'm studying to be a therapist. I feel like I can get tons out of this book. And there's really no reason why I should leave it here collecting dust over years. So that is my one and only reading goal, to finish the... Well, it's only, yeah, it looks big. It's only about 550 pages. Big pages, of course, but yeah, that should be quite manageable, I think. And that's all. I'm gonna write my master's thesis next year over the course of about 3 months. So I feel like I'm not gonna get nearly as much reading done as I have in the last years. So yeah, we're keeping it low stakes. We're keeping it chill. I'm probably gonna lose my shit anyways because of my master's thesis. But yeah, I'm still gonna try to do 2 videos a month, like I have been doing for the most part. And yeah, that's it. That's all. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, thank you.